Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are honored for all of you to be here. My name is Dr. Assael Romanelli.
And I'm Galit Romanelli. And tonight we have a very, very special guest who is Pastor Kevin Thompson. We both read and loved this book, marked every single page, every other word, earmark, dog marks, pencil marks, exclamation marks.
So before we introduce our guest, we'll say a couple words about us. So we work with couples. I'm a couple family therapist.
I'm a life coach and a PhD gender studies student.
And together we run Own Your Shit, and we basically help people own their shit and turn that shit into fertilizers.
Yes. And then we help couples marry each other so that they can foster a nurturing, caring relationship and continue to grow with each other.
And since the war broke out, we've opened a relational home front where we offer free webinars and talks in Hebrew and now in English as well to help couples not only survive but thrive in this difficult time. And we realize that all of us have been kidnapped on the 7th of October. And all of us need to basically reimagine, renegotiate our marriages, and
use our relationship as a resource for resilience.
Because at the end of the day, our relationships are the most important source of power and agency that we have. So that's the framework of us. And as part of that, we started this series with Gotta Help Israel called Relational Aid, where we speak to leading authors and therapists and thought leaders. And today it is our honor to introduce Kevin A. Thompson, who was the married life pastor at Bayside Church in California. Every year he meets with nearly 100 couples with a range of needs, from premarital counseling to navigating the most serious betrayals. A marriage and parenting conference speaker, he lives with his wife, Jenny, and their 2 kids in California. I had to change that. He's also the author of 4 books: U-Turn, For When the Nearest Exit is Behind You, Friends, Partners, and Lovers, Happily and Fearless Families. And I want to share a personal anecdote. When did I meet Kevin? How was I introduced to him? I have a blog on Psychology Today, and I wrote an article called Friends, Lovers, and Partners because I was just thinking about it in the clinic. And then I get an email from Kevin who says, "Hey, I wrote the book 5 years ago." And I was like, so I ordered the book and I read it and I loved it so much. I read it twice in a row and I highly recommend this. And we'll put
and then you gave it to me to read.
And then Galit read it.
Yeah.
Anyways, long story short, Kevin, thank you. Shalom. Thanks for coming.
Well, what an absolute honor, Assael and Galit, to be with you. Thank you for this invitation. I mean, I'll tell those who are listening, Assael, what my first response to you was whenever you asked me to do this, I said no, yes. And the no was my fear of just being totally ignorant of what you're experiencing in this moment as a nation. And I just the fear that I would have of in any way speaking harm because of my own ignorance, but then an absolute yes in that any way that we can help. First of all, any way we can help couples in general, but then beyond that, specifically what's going on in Israel. I know we in America, we feel so helpless in many ways, and watching the tragedies that y'all are experiencing in this moment, we desperately want to support Israel and what is happening and don't always know how. And then beyond that, we have the foolishness that happens within every country, ours specifically, that gets projected outwardly. So what an honor it is to be with you and to speak about friends, partners, and lovers, because I do think that these are concepts that transcend time and culture in so many ways. And it might take a different nuance in different settings and situations, but the overall concept, I think, is a positive one. And so I wrote this book, probably 2015, 2016 was I actually wrote it. I think it was published in 2017. And the concept at the time was simply this. And whenever you go for a job, you tend to have, there's a job description that is there. Here's exactly what is expected of you. So I moved from Arkansas to California a couple of years ago in a job transition. Whenever I came here, there was a very clear job description. Here's what is expected of you. But what was interesting to me is, first of all, my own marriage, but then also as a person that's involved with couples at various life stages, of how many people had no idea what it meant to be a husband or a wife. And so I just set out with the question of, okay, if there were a job description as a husband and as a wife, what would that actually be? And so what is it that my wife, Jenny, needs from me? So we've been married 23, coming up on 24 years. And then what is it that I specifically need for her? So just begin that process, searching all these different places, and ended up in the great Hebrew scripture, and the idea in Genesis 2 of within our created story. It seems to be that God created these basic roles that are there, that he gave Adam and Eve a task, and so there is this role of partnership, and yet there was a uniqueness about the relationship. What was that? That is friendship, and then ultimately chapter 2 ends with this idea of intimacy. And so I landed on this concept, although scripturally it kind of lays out as partner, friend, lover. I kind of reordered that just a little bit, because I do think there is a specific order that is there that is good and healthy. And whenever I think about what does it mean to be a husband, here's what I think Jenny needs from me. She needs me to be her friend, her partner, and her lover. And so I use a couple illustrations for that. The first illustration is to show the importance of friendship and how everything begins right there. So I think about a house, and the very foundation of the house now is friendship. Everything rests upon that. As a matter of fact, I would hope that most marriages began as a strong friendship. I mean, it begins with the concept of, even if you're going to ask somebody out on a date, you go out to dinner or a movie or a walk or whatever you do, the question to me becomes, is this person interesting? Can we get along? Can I stand his voice or her voice? I mean, those just very basic level concepts of what friendship is all about. And then the partnership really are the walls of the house. That's what distinguishes rooms, locations. You cook in the kitchen, you do different things in the living room, different things in the bedroom. Partnership distinguishes who does what and how are we going to get things done. And then ultimately, to me, lover is intimacy. It's the roof. It's the thing that kind of shelters us in the midst of so much sorrow and tragedy and the hardships of life. And intimacy, whenever I talk about lover, obviously we are going to talk about sex, but intimacy to me is bigger than that. It's more than just that, but it is that close connection that is there. So that idea of friend, partner, lover, the house illustration is one way to talk about it. There's another way that I so often use to illustrate ways that are going on. So if I'm doing a marriage conference, I actually have couples work through this. So if there are couples who are part of this, you can kind of figure this out as I talk about it. And the first is I just have people stand up and I have them hold hands. And so as you're sitting side by side at your computer, you can hold hands. And it is this idea that we are friends. We walk through life side by side together. It's not that Jenny's out in front of me or I'm out in front of her. It's not that she's over me or I'm over her. It is this beautiful picture of equals that we are experiencing life, experiencing life together in this journey of what we're trying to experience. So that's what friendship to me is, hand in hand. And so often I think the base kind of feeling of friendship is that of trust. I'm not going to hold somebody's hand if I don't trust them. I might hold their wrist to keep their hand from hurting me, but it is real vulnerability for me to open my hand and give it to somebody else in that moment. And so friendship truly is built on this concept of trust. And then what I do next is I have couples actually begin to turn back to back. And the idea is, I'm facing this way exactly. That's exactly the way I look at it. And you think about what's going on from that concept is I can scan the horizon 180 degrees this way and look for threats and opportunities. And Jenny can scan the horizon 180 degrees this way, looking for threats and opportunities. And what happens in this moment is this relationship actually it expands our abilities and what we can watch out for, the threats that we can actually take care of, and all those things. And this allows us now to be far more powerful together than we are actually separate. I always talk about how a healthy partnership now will multiply our strengths and divide our weaknesses. And so this allows me. There are things that Jenny's good at that now they're weaknesses of mine, but because of her, they're no longer weaknesses of mine. And then beyond that, the things that I'm strong at, we can wed her gifts to mine and multiply that forward. So think about this: friendship. Isn't it good to always have somebody by your side? partnership, isn't it great to always have somebody who has your back? Now, the two of you know better than anybody when marriage goes wrong, that very person who's supposed to have our back becomes our greatest threat. And think about how unhealthy relationships are when you're having to watch your back from the very person who's supposed to protect it. And then finally, intimacy lover is the idea of I have the couple turn face to face and they see each other. And this picture now is that this person sees me in totality, sees me more than anybody else sees me, and yet loves me completely. And so now that does not mean they excuse everything I do, anything like that. As a matter of fact, they're seeing me, hopefully then helps me in a process of healing, of transformation, of change, of all of those types of things. And so that to me is the picture of what it means to be a friend, partner, and lover. So friendship is built on trust. Partnership is built on respect. It is this idea of there is something within you that has power, that has skill, that has opportunity, that I can depend on you, I can lean on you of what's going on. There is value within you, and you bring value to my life, I bring value to yours. And then ultimately, lovers is built on vulnerability. It's that ability now to let the guard down and begin to show you maybe aspects of myself that I don't show anybody else in the world. And I think about almost a little formula here. Trust plus respect leads to vulnerability. And so if a couple's really struggling with vulnerability, I tend to then begin to ask the question, okay, is there trust and is there respect? Now, there can be, and sometimes we just have to learn to be vulnerable. But if there's not trust or respect, then we shouldn't be vulnerable until those two things are first put into place. And yet, whenever you have all those things kind of at work and functioning, friends, partners, lovers, trust, respect, vulnerability, there really becomes very, very few limits that can be placed on a couple of what they can accomplish and who they can be.
Wow. Okay. This is a lot.
Love it so much.
First of all, people feel free to comment in the comment section. I want to already ask a question. By the way, in a couple of moments, we're going to, Kevin's going to demo on us a practical application or skill or intervention that everyone at home could try. But I want to first ask you, from our experience, now we're in wartime, right? So it's tense. There's a lot of violence around us. And I feel and we're basically a lot of survival mode. And if I'm thinking about our marriage, I think out of the three relationships, I think the lovers has taken the biggest hit. And I feel like it's really hard for me to choose to be vulnerable, to choose to be open up, also sexually, but also just intimately.
Well, I think it's really interesting because I remember, we've kind of gone through phases of this war, right? We're entering the third month, I think, of this war. And I remember at one stage, I think we're doubling down on our partners because we're also, like partners as, a home, but we're also partners in business. So that's like, that's strong. That our partners element of our relationship is, almost, I'd say, thriving, right? But I'd say that actually at the start of the war, friendship really took a hit.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I forgot the piece about trust, but I think that for me at least, I'm so cocooned kind of in myself, and I think also that ability to kind of enjoy each other that comes with a friendship of just kind of that avenue got so limited that even before lovers, right? And that's why I love your equation of it's trust and respect. Then we get to kind of the intimacy. Then we get to the vulnerability. So I'm like, we haven't tapped into the friendship yet. And it's not because I don't like him. I like him. I want to spend time with him, but there's something about that shift. And I remember in your book, one of the things that I love so much about the friendship is the element of time, right? That we have to invest time in friendships. And I feel like for me, I get to the end of the day, I have such limited emotional capacity that I guess my question is, how can I ensure or foster more more of my emotional resources in order to allocate in the kind of emotional energy to the friendship.
Yeah, I think the very first piece of advice that I would give both of you and everybody who is listening is to give yourself a tremendous amount of grace during this season. And so this is just generically true across the lifespan, that these roles are going to kind of ebb and flow based on the circumstances that are going on. Now, I don't know the stats in Israel. I can tell you the stats here in the States. The average marriage, if divorce happens, it happens around year 7.8. But the problems are actually communicated in year 5, but they're actually present in year 3. The couple just doesn't know it yet. And so basically they start out with this great sense of marital satisfaction. They get married, the honeymoon happens, all these things. About year 3, problems begin to present themselves. They don't recognize them yet. About year 5 is when they actually finally might start to seek help, or they understand it between themselves. And then if they don't get the help they need, the marriage ends in year 7. Well, what happens for a lot of couples in years 3 is they start having kids. And so I think what tends to happen is we get married, the friendship is kind of naturally there. We start working on the intimacy. The intimacy is kind of naturally there. And we really don't have to be partners per se. I mean, we might be having a house and those kind of things, but it's not kind of until kids come along for the average couple that this element, they have to learn it. And they're trying to learn it in a time that's exhausting and change, and couples tend not to learn it. And then what happens is that begins to erode away, generally the friendship first, and then intimacy as well. And then the whole thing kind of collapses on itself. So that's a very natural life stage and pattern of you have to learn different roles at different times. And then there are just seasons of life in which your intimacy isn't going to be as, whenever you're having kids, intimacy isn't as good, right? Sickness and all those kind of things. And so I would say to all your listeners, everybody watching, to understand in this time of national trauma, personal trauma, family trauma, to recognize your sense of marital satisfaction may not be what you want it to be, and that's okay. And there are certain roles that are going to suffer in this moment. Assael, it doesn't surprise me at all that you would say the intimacy has suffered to some extent, because think about this. Intimacy, especially sexual intimacy, requires extreme safety.
Yeah.
Well, your body doesn't have that right now. Even if you feel totally safe with the person that you're with, your body is still in this fight, flight, freeze, collapse.
Yes.
And so that is going to lower your libido. It's going to do all sorts of things mentally, physically, of what's going on. Then that's completely acceptable to understand. Hey, this is a season. Yes, we want to work on it if we can, but more than anything, we want to give ourselves tremendous grace to recognize this is completely natural. It's not going to be like this forever. And then Galit, at the same time, from a friendship perspective, the friendship does take this almost downtime, this relaxing kind of moment. I'm going to let my guard down and be with this other person and have fun. Well, your body can't do that right now because it is on such high alert of everything that is taking place. So it's no surprise to me that both of you would say your partnership is probably your strongest role right now, because your partnership is in part your survival mechanism to deal with what you're enduring with at this moment. So instead of seeing this as, and not that you two are, but others who are watching might be thinking, oh man, our marriage is suffering because of this. No, it sounds to me like your marriage is thriving and doing exactly what it's supposed to do in this very specific season. And then can we come along during the season and try to find ways to up the friendship and the intimacy? That'd be great. But beyond that, as we move hopefully quickly into what is the next season of life, things will kind of begin to return to some sense of norm, and even not just norm, but actual growth because of what the two of you have experienced together, and then what you as a nation are beginning to endure.
So I wanted to ask you another question before we'll demo on us.
Wait, but I also just want to say that was so, because I feel like that was so helpful. That was so, I mean, I knew those things, I guess, here, but to have them reflected back and for you to kind of say them just is like, oh, yes, of course. this up, right? So thank you. That was
So I wanted to add,
a big hug.
it was like a big hug. I wanted to say, so I wanted to ask you before we demo. So I'm assuming our story is not that unique. A lot of couples, I'm reminding you, 250,000 couples now are basically split. So there is no intimacy because they see each other once every, 40 days or 30 days. What would be your general advice for couples that are, let's say we're letting go of intimacy right now, not just us, I guess most couples, but the friendship, which I mean, you've also said it's the foundation to have everything. What would be kind of some advice or some tips you would give for couples that either not in the same place or they're in the same house, but they are flooded or they're in survival mode? Well, what do you think would be a good direction?
Yeah, so I think for those who are still in physical proximity of each other, and I don't know how this works there as far as communication with each other, I think as to try to do some check-ins beyond the partnership details of how are we going to endure today. Yeah. And so to have to, and seriously, if you don't have the time to do this, it might be as basic as it is 1 minute. You get to go for 1 minute, and then the next time we talk, I'm going to get to go for 1 minute. Wow. But it is a moment of how are you? Mm-hmm. I care. I want to know. One thing that I say very often about Jenny is Jenny loves me and she's for me. I know those two things without a doubt. And so to even communicate it in that way, and to say to your spouse, I love you, I am for you. How is your heart right now? Those are friendship type questions. I mean, those are the things that, as I check in on my friends today, we're kind of on holiday over here in the States right now, in between Christmas and New Year's. Our schedules all change, and it gives us an opportunity to kind of catch up with some friends, that we haven't talked to in a while. And obviously, I've moved 1,500 miles away from my hometown. As I'm checking in on friends today, we move past what are the details of the day and into a true condition of how's your heart, how's your mind, what's going on right now, what are you thinking about, what are you worried about, what are you concerned about, and so I think, and guys, I think this is very important to hear that without trying to solve that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So be the ears for your spouse without trying to solve what is actually going on, because let's face it, we can't really fix a lot of what's happening, but if we're not very careful, it will be, and sometimes this runs along gender lines. So for me and Jenny, so if you're Enneagram familiar, right, I'm a 6 on the Enneagram, Jenny's a 1, so she likes to fix everything. And whereas I'm just the loyalist, I'm just always there. And so sometimes, a lot of times, if by gender, that tends to be switched. A lot of times it's the man that wants to solve things, the woman says. So for me and Jenny, that's different. But sometimes I'll just have to tell her, hey, I just need you to listen, and then to have that. And so I think if you can find ways, and so often whenever it comes to friendship, we think, oh, it takes all this time and I have no time. It's not that at all. It literally is, can we connect for a couple of minutes? So I don't know if the spouses are away in military service. I don't know if they're allowed to text or not, or call, or how that works. Yeah. But to do those kind of things, to use that time just for a moment to communicate our love for one another, how we are for each other, how we look forward to being reunited with each other, and you still have to do the check-in stuff of, how's work, how are the kids, how's money. I mean, the life situations still take place, but to carve out a little bit of time for that, I think would be a valuable way. And I mean, and if you're in your house, listen, this is going to sound ridiculous. I don't think it is, but to literally leverage each other's bodies, not in a sexual way, but in an intimate way, to begin to lower your levels of cortisol that's going on, to up your levels of oxytocin, and literally don't hug for 3 seconds, hug for 30 seconds, for 45 seconds, for a minute, until you actually begin to feel your bodies collapse into each other. That would be a useful way. And even within that, see, Assael, you asked for 1, I'm giving you 3.
We love them. Give me your mom.
We hate them now.
Eat them all.
This might feel uncomfortable, but I don't think it is. So even last night, we went on a little trip, went up into the mountains, took our kids on a little trip, and we got home and we're on the couch. Jenny's kind of working, I'm kind of working, but we're side by side. The TV's on, and I just kind of put my computer to the side. She had put her computer to the side, and the next thing I know, I took a pillow, I just put it in her lap, and I laid down, and she just started rubbing my head, and I fell asleep. Okay, what if there's a way you can carve out some time, and it is this? All right, you don't have time for everything, but tonight, my bride's going to lay down. I'm going to be kind of upright. She's going to lay down. I'm going to rub her back. I'm going to rub her head, and she gets to just relax. And literally,
I'll take it. I want it. Yes.
The goal of this, in part, think about it, you're living rightfully so in a continual state of fight or flight.
Yes.
Is there something that we can actually do to give your body a little bit of a break? Well, here's the thing. If you both go into that relaxed mode, it's possible that neither of your bodies will actually relax. But if it really is, hey, I've got this, you relax. And then tomorrow night, maybe you switch.
Wow.
And that idea of it's almost, I mean, you're in a military situation. It's almost like this idea, who's keeping watch?
Right.
So the other can sleep. And to actually use that as a couple, I think would begin to assist what's going on.
Wow.
I love that.
That is great.
I love that. And then I want to kind of build off of that and then ask, so when partners can come together and unite, whether it's for, 2 days or 3 hours or for, until further notice, should they be prioritizing their friendship? Is that kind of the first channel that they should be intentional about kind of working on or what's the word?
Prioritizing.
Yeah, prioritizing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all matters, right? At that moment when you've been separated and all those kind of things. Again, I would probably, if you're physically separated, I would probably begin to see how can we leverage each other's physical bodies to calm ourselves down, not just sex, although obviously sex is important, but I don't know what it's like to be separated and to come back in that moment. And it could be that the intimacy might take a little bit more work. I don't know. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak about is even the things I just talked about of that idea of the lasting hug, of the holding hands, of that kind of thing, to not feel the pressure of I have to tell everything that I just experienced or that kind of thing. It's interesting. So there are times in which I'll come home from extended work or something like that, and Jenny wants to hear everything that happened. Well, I'm in no way prepared for that. And so I think one thing a couple might want to look at is if you're having communication problems in that reuniting time, try to find a way first and foremost to reconnect physically, not just sexually, but physically, and then ease into it. And I don't know if this applies to y'all's situation or not, but one thing specifically is women tend to be better at communicating that, men tend not to be. And I think one reason that happens is think about how women generally communicate versus how men often communicate. Women often communicate face to face. And so it's over lunch, it's that kind of thing. They're engrossed in the story. You can almost see them lean forward. I can almost guarantee you've never seen a picture of me leaning forward with big eyes toward the story of one of my guy friends. Instead, what you will see is side by side.
Yeah.
We're on the golf course together. We're in the golf cart. We're on a walk. We're in a duck blind. We're in a fishing boat. We're doing something.
Right.
And then what tends to happen is then without the pressure of the eyes right on them, many men begin to open up a little bit. And so I would think if you've been apart, now you're coming back together. If you're having trouble communicating, one, don't force too much information out of your spouse. Allow them to share when they're ready to share. And then secondly, consider where the conversation's happening and in what format. I know for my wife and I, one of the best ways for us to communicate is to go downstairs, get in our hot tub. The next thing you know, it's pretty dark. We're side by side. And it's amazing how I will begin to open up in ways that face to face, we won't necessarily do so. And so to kind of try out things like that to see, one thing that Jenny and I do often, again, I don't understand the security measures of where y'all are right now. One thing Jenny and I try to do often is take a walk. It's the absolute best way for us to communicate as we're side by side walking. It's amazing the conversations we begin to have.
I love that. And those are really, really valuable tips.
I have to say that after I read your book, we have a dog. It's Galit's dog.
Yeah, it's mine.
So she takes her out 3-4 times a day. And only after I read your book, she always said,
I always said, do you want to come down for a walk with me? And he would always say, no, it's not. What a waste of time. I could do other things. And now he started to come with me.
The book.
And it's
great.
So helpful.
Your book really influenced me in prioritizing taking a walk as friendship time. I think what's really important, and I want to accentuate this for people that are listening or later or now, is that when you come together, as to really take it slow and side by side, I think it's really important, especially with men in the clinic. Look me in the eyes. Why aren't you looking at me? And a lot of men, it's like, whoa, overload.
Yeah. And also this kind of need of like, when you come back, like, I want to hear everything, but actually there's a pace there, and we have to respect that there's a pace, and it might not be the pace and consumption that I want.
And one more thing, the husband or wife, they're coming back from Army service, they saw horrible things. So they need to transition from survival mode, life and death, to relational mode, which is a completely different, it's a different vector, almost like.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, and then we can open up for questions for audiences. Do you want to, you've given so many tips. I'm wondering, do we even have anything to demo? Do you want to demonstrate on us, or
do you want to use your guinea pigs?
I want to do one thing, and it's so ironic considering I just basically encourage you not to be face to face in order to have conversation. But I want the two of you to turn to each other, not say anything, but I want you to lock eyes. And so,
what are the eyes, Kevin?
It just however it comes naturally to you. I want you to focus on a couple things. Here's what's intriguing to me. It's whenever I do this with couples and conferences, and so let's say I'm speaking to 500 couples. I have them stand up across the auditorium. I have them to go side by side. We talk about friendship. We go back to back, talk about partnership. Then whenever it comes to intimacy, I have them turn to each other. What's amazing is I always lose the crowd in that moment. They begin to focus on each other, and they're no longer listening to me. And it reminds me of how we do not look each other in the eye often enough. And I think it is this connection here. It's interesting. Think about this. If you're working with somebody who's single and they're trying to figure out who to date and things like this, one of the pieces of advice you'll probably give them is, if you will linger a little bit longer with somebody and they linger back, that's a sign of interest. Locking eyes is actually a sign of interest in one another. And when couples begin to kind of pull apart, they stop looking at each other in the eye. Now, as you're doing that, I want you to do one more thing. I want you to notice, are their pupils dilated or not? Now, think about this. If you're in fight or flight, your pupils are going to begin to dilate a little bit more because you're in distress. You're trying to take in as much information as possible. If you will learn to look your spouse in the eye often and then begin to read, what do their eyes look like? It will begin to tell you, hey, this may not be a moment I need to press them very much. They need help. They're in distress. They need at this moment calmness, and they need to be reassured. They need to have security. If their eyes aren't dilated that much, all right, this is a moment I probably can bring up the fact that I didn't like the fact the trash wasn't taken out, or, you said you were going to do something and not. This is a very small thing that kind of gives us an insight into the emotional state of our spouse. And if we will begin to learn to pick up on the dilation of their eyes, it will help us know, what do they need? Do they need comfort and reassurance from me right now? Do they need space? Or is this a moment I can talk? So that's the exercise.
Wow.
That's huge.
I never thought about that.
How big are my pupils?
Pupils, the white part is just holding. You're I didn't realize. I would like,
Pulled out of the blue.
why?
Backwork and stuff.
But I have no baseline. I don't know how big they usually are. I've never actually looked at your pupils.
Yours actually good. They're small.
They're small. Small.
Okay, so
Love that. And actually, Kevin, I'm gonna adopt that to use with my kids because right? Like I'm sure it works with our kids as well. And I feel
so that actually came from my book Fearless Families, which is a book about primarily it's more parenting than it is marriage. We learned to do that with my son who was in distress, to read his pupils, to figure out what he needed, and it radically changed everything.
wow, I'm adopting it, and we're getting that. We're gonna read that book.
But also it's a baseline of knowing how big her pupils are on the regular.
No, but you know if they were bigger. Phenomenal.
That is amazing. I want to open this up. If anybody who's watching us or listening to us have any questions, you can either write in the chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Because this is really, I also think about, there's just so many things here. I think what I'm taking from this as well, as I'm thinking of having a lot of grace and realizing that the lovers might take a back seat right now, especially while we're still in the heat of the war, but to really not let go of that friendship, because once the friendship is gone, I feel like it's really hard to bring it all together. Because as you said, it's the floor of the whole.
It's a foundation.
Foundation.
Yeah, and honestly, I think one thing that would concern me about couples is don't be surprised by incompatibility from the standpoint of, let's say hypothetically, the husband desperately needs sex to feel connected and safe.
Right.
And the wife, because of all the fear of what is going on, that's the last thing that's on her mind. Yes. I think that, or vice versa, I think that's where it can become really difficult. So imagine a husband who's maybe been off in service. He comes back and he's on such high alert. He doesn't even have the energy for intimacy, and she desperately wants reconnection. Those kind of things, I think you can expect those kind of things. You have to be very patient with each other through those issues and try to find ways to navigate that. But don't be surprised if those kind of things are happening.
Basically expect the unexpected. And you know, one of the things we say here a lot in Israel is that an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal.
Right.
Yeah. And basically, I think, I'm thinking about the crazy situation that couples are really with a lot of tense and trauma and fear, and this is.
But I think Kevin, I love what you're saying, is that when there are these discrepancies, like your tips on to kind of just like lean into each other or hold each other or look into each other's eyes, right? That's how you can kind of rebuild. And like you said, like lower the cortisol and enhance oxytocin so that you can start building that foundation again. And I think that it's so important that you're stressing the elements of safety for each of us and how that's been affected. And so to give ourselves grace and to really recognize it's not that the relationship is going spiraling and downhill. It's that, we're in very challenging contexts that are affecting us. And so I think also that frames it in a way that gives almost the relationship grace, right? Like each of us grace individually, but also the relationship.
No question. No question. And I think this is beyond even the war topic. I think one of the least utilized tools that husbands and wives have is each other's bodies. And I don't mean that sex. I just mean the concept of we can literally lower each other's blood pressure. And yet we tend not to do that. Just the power of skin. I mean, think about it. The largest organ we have is skin. How can we leverage that now for the well-being of our spouse and vice versa? And obviously sex is an aspect of that. But so often for couples, the depth of their intimacy is sex and nothing else.
Right.
Which actually hurts the sex.
Right.
But if they can begin to up their levels of other forms of intimacy, it will have an impact in not only the other roles, but actually in the lover role as well.
I love that. I think that's so important.
Like so much wisdom. Like every sentence it's like your book. Like every sentence, I'm like, I should be writing this.
Just name more, Kevin. Just name more. Phenomenal.
I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we're going to start slowly wrapping this up, even though we'd love to talk to you for more hours. I guess, Kevin, maybe some closing thoughts as you're hearing a little bit of the reality of couples. I mean, you've worked with thousands of couples, and I don't see how we don't know when this is going to end, and we're very conscious of the fact that when this war ends, the front line is going to be marriages. They're basically holding the society together, and we really believe that we can fix the world one couple at a time. That's where equality starts. That's where love starts, and opening listening. So I'd love to hear your thoughts or closing, just broadcast live from your head or your heart about whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when I look at what's going on, I think so much of it comes down to this idea of, I mean, Dan Siegel from UCLA, interpersonal neurobiology, he talks about these three basic needs that we have of agency. So we need to control our own lives. We need bonding. We need each other, and we need some type of certainty in order to live in this world. And I think about what war does is it robs you of all three of those.
Yes.
And so you don't have agency over your own lives.
No.
It disconnects you as people. I mean, you just said, 250,000 single families now, and obviously there's no certainty whatsoever. And to recognize that, all right, this is our reality at this moment. We pray it's not our reality forever, but it's our reality at this moment. And then to expect some of the consequences of that, and then have great patience with each other. So Siegel will go on to say, when you don't have agency, it tends to express itself as anger. And so whenever you feel anger within yourself, whenever you're experiencing, you see somebody else expressing anger, you can begin to ask the question, all right, they don't feel agency over their own lives right now. How can I assist them with that? Or how can I be compassionate toward that? Or as I look at my own life, all right, what is it that I do actually control? And so whenever we don't have bonding, he says it expresses itself as sadness or shame. And so whenever we feel sadness within our own lives or some sense of shame, we can say, all right, then I feel disconnected from the people that I love at this moment. Is there a way I can connect with them? Or because of the circumstances of the war, I can't, and I just have to grieve that feeling, but to know that is a feeling that hopefully will change over time. And then whenever we don't have certainty, Siegel goes on to say that expresses itself as fear. And so we're absolutely right in experiencing and understanding the presence of fear in this moment. But I think it's so important to make sure that while we feel fear, we can't operate out of fear with each other. We have to operate out of love with each other. And so how can we go about doing that? And so my encouragement probably to the couples who are listening here, it is it's a very basic message. But if you can come back to figure out, in this midst of being out of control of so many things, what is it that I actually do control? What today can I actually control? And to tend to fixate on those things, that will increase your sense of agency of what's taking place. And then to begin to recognize, all right, there are some things I can't control, but I can't influence. What can I influence? I can influence my spouse's well-being. I can influence how my kids are doing. I can't control those things, but I can influence those things. And what that will do is it will actually begin to raise your sense of bonding, which will begin to lower your sense of sadness to some extent. And then finally to recognize, look, there are some things I control. There are some things I influence. There are some things I have to accept. I didn't cause this war. I can't end this war. I just have to accept that these are the realities of what's going on in this moment. I can't fight against them. I just have to accept that this is the hand that we've been dealt at this moment. And how can I now do the best to use this moment that we've been given to learn, to grow, to endure, those kind of things. And if you do that, it will actually give you a little bit of a level of certainty, even in the midst of the uncertainty. And in so doing, it will begin to lower your fear. It's a funny thing, as we admit our fear, it actually lessens a little bit. As we live in denial of our fear, it actually increases. And so I think to be transparent, to be honest in those kinds of things. And so that basic idea, so over here, our intelligence agency is called the CIA. And so what I always tell people in America is, What do you control? What do you influence? What do you accept? You need to know the CIA because the CIA knows you, right? And so that basic concept, if you literally, I would take a sheet of paper, draw a couple columns. I have it. I actually have it right here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but so this is my latest book, Stay in Your Lane. And that's what this is about. It's about that very thing. And so I just take 3 columns and I write them out. What's mine? What's theirs? What's God's? What's mine? What's theirs? What's God's? What's mine I control? What's theirs I can influence? What's God's I have to accept? That's how you figure out the CIA. And if you can get things in the right column, it will, I think, increase your agency, your bonding, and your certainty. And in so doing, it will lower your anger, your sadness, and then your fear.
Wow. That is huge gift, because I have to say that living through this period is an emotional roller coaster where those feelings, and now I can kind of have an even greater grasp of why they're so prevalent, is fear and uncertainty and sadness. I mean, those are, everyday emotions now. And that's a great way of kind of playing with the volume of them.
No.
Amazing.
So as we're wrapping up, and before let's both of us kind of do our closing, and then we'll.
Well, I just want to say that I love the recommendation of kind of just using our bodies and not for sex so much more. I think so often we talk to couples about expanding what intimacy and what connection and what physical connection means. And just when you said about kind of putting our heads in putting my head in Assael's lap and having him kind of stroking my hair, I was thinking last night when we got into bed, Assael did that. He touched my hair, and all of a sudden I could feel my body like melt and just, and I can't remember the last time he did that. And I can't remember the last time, and I could just feel every kind of muscle in my body relaxing. And I think that's much, much needed now, that being, and I think that you're right. I think the expectation that we can each do it at the same time just isn't realistic, because we're so, you feel, you have to feel like somebody's holding reality, right? We can't both kind of let go. But that taking turns is so important.
Yeah.
You're tasked with doing it again tonight.
Wait, we have a question here. Kevin, going to read it?
No, go for it.
How much responsibility does one spouse have to influence or regulate the anxiety, fear, and anger of their partner? When is it appropriate for individuals to own and take responsibility for their own emotional states?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't think I'm ever supposed to own the emotional state of my spouse at all. I'm here to help. I'm here to assist. I'm here to influence to the best of my ability. Now, if our relationship is healthy, what that means is sometimes maybe I can point out in her things she doesn't even see within herself, and she can do the same to me, and try to lessen the load. No doubt, where I would begin to get uncomfortable is if this is not an equal reciprocal relationship. And so if you have one spouse who is owning the emotions of the other and always trying to manage the other and never getting any benefit whatsoever, what do we call that? We call that parenting. And so marriage is supposed to be between adults, and as adults, we're here for each other. We do this equally with each other. If that relationship becomes unequal, then you're in a parent-child relationship. I talk about that in Friends, Partners, and Lovers. That becomes a very dangerous spot. So, Dina, I think you asked a great question. I think it's the idea of I'm here to assist Jenny, but she has to own her own emotion. I can never own that for her. As a matter of fact, if I try to own it, that is actually disrespectful to her. And I'm trying to control something then that I actually can't control. I'm supposed to influence. And so a couple measures. Is it equal? Are we helping each other? Are there times in which I get to relax and she's helping take care of me, and she gets relaxed and I'm taking care of her? If all those things are playing out, and I'm here to assist, not to own, then all that is good. If it ever becomes unequal, then you're going into a parent-child relationship, and that becomes a dangerous thing.
I'm
just this.
give one of those.
Just that. What's it possible?
I want to say closing. I think I'm just really touched by you.
Yeah.
This was a cold call. We never met, you know, and you've been so generous, and I feel in a certain way. It's like I feel like I've put my head on your lap.
Yes, that's how I feel.
Yeah,
I feel like we both kind of lean.
yeah. And I feel like I felt like you're like, I'm
not gonna say like this was just the greatest, biggest hug.
because I think what's making it even harder is this feeling of not being understood by the world, like this loneliness.
Yeah, loneliness.
Also on a national level, and your generosity of bringing your teaching and your Torah.
And feeling like we don't have friends. There's a feeling of like we don't have friends, and you are a friend tonight, and it just felt amazing. I felt so held and loved and supported.
And you know, I'm realizing, and I'm broadcasting live right now, is that I think that we do this for the couples, but we don't have a lot where, like, I really feel like you're holding us, so we can hold them, and this, so we can kind of, you know, hold each other. And I just really, really want to thank you. I think it's really important and generous, and
Yeah.
And this connects, and I'm sure whoever's watching wants. Here's the space where I ask you, how can people learn more from you, Kevin?
Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest way to get a hold of me is go to changetheodds.com. So changetheodds.com. That's a little play on words. So in America, the divorce rate is about 50-50. And so basically people think that a chance of successful marriage is the flip of a coin. And what we're trying to do here in California, and then ultimately in the U.S. and the West in general, is to change those odds. Because I seriously think if couples get help from people like you, their chance of marital success is probably about 90-10 if they will actually do the work. And so think about the difference between something that's 50-50 versus 90-10. So we're trying to change the odds. So that's probably the easiest way. And then everything I have is on Amazon. You can search Kevin A. Thompson on Amazon, Friends, Partners, and Lovers. The latest book, Stay in Your Lane, is out there as well. But let me just say what an honor it has been to be with you. And I'm grateful to be able to be your friend on this night, because, again, we feel helpless on this side of the world with the situation that's going on. And so any relief we can provide to anybody in the midst of the suffering that's taking place is an absolute honor. And I can say here in where I am in Northern California, you have a tremendous amount of support in what is taking place. And we hope that we can vocalize that in a way that you can experience it and hear it, to know that you are not alone in what's going on.
And I hope, Kevin, you're seeing all the comments here saying thank you. I'm grateful. God bless you. And I just want to say, like, obviously I'll upload this video with all the links to all of his books, and you'll be able to reach them. And we're here as well for anyone in Israel who wants support and help. And we want to send everyone who's listening and watching, we want to wish all of you, may your friendships be deep and strong.
Yeah.
May you be solid partners to each other, and may be sensitive and deep lovers.
Thank you so much.
Kevin, God bless you. Thank you for your journey. You have amazing wisdom, and it's been a pleasure.
So much wisdom.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Same to you all. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.